Hi guys, and welcome to another edition of the Gimbal and Orange Show. Today we are coming back to StarCraft 2, and we're going to be talking with Justin Loeb of SC2 Earnings. Justin, welcome.
Hey, how's it going?
So, yeah, obviously I want to as usual, we spend the first half talking about the professional side, but we do also are always curious how the people who get themselves involved in the scene like you have first find their way into StarCraft 2. So, what was the catalyst for you getting into StarCraft?
I was not involved in StarCraft Brood War whatsoever. Um, Probably the first time I really saw StarCraft was at the very first MLG Raleigh event. So it was really small, some good players there, but not much of a crowd. Everything was just kind of getting going. I was actually there mainly because of the World of Warcraft event, not specifically for StarCraft.
Right.
At the time, I was part of Team Loaded, and our World of Warcraft team was the ex-Button Bashers team, who were one of the best World of Warcraft teams from South Korea. So I made my way to Raleigh and hung out with them, which was a lot of fun. And yeah, I guess that's the first time I kind of got experience with StarCraft and kind of got hooked with it.
Huh. So you sort of in my mind I'm sort of imagining that you're there for a while at MLG and StarCraft 2 just sort of catches the corner of your eye. What about StarCraft or what you saw there piqued your interest?
Um, I'm not sure if I could nail it down to one specific thing.
Sure.
I've always liked the one versus one aspect in esports, whether it was Quake Live. Um, but I've always been really involved in esports, whether it's Counter-Strike, Call of Duty, Quake Live, you name it. I usually watch it. So I don't know. I really like the 1v1 aspect. And StarCraft 2 is just a new game and something else to follow, I guess you could say.
Huh. Well, I mean, so you mentioned you mentioned Quake, but some of the other games you mentioned as well as the WoW Arena are team-based games. So I'm curious why the 1v1 appeals to you and so much.
Um, I guess it all comes down to one player. I'm not too sure. It's just so much pressure on one person instead of kind of spread across five different guys. In Counter-Strike, if one person dies, well, it's not a big deal. We still have four players. We can still win the round.
Right.
But in StarCraft, the one person makes a mistake, and the game could be over. So there's a lot more pressure, a lot more stakes.
Hmm. And so when you saw it at MLG, did you follow up on it immediately when you got back, or how did you come in contact with it again?
Um, I can't exactly remember. It's been a while now.
Sure.
But do you know if the first Intel Extreme Masters event was before or after MLG Raleigh? I think it was a little bit before, I want to say,
I
but I
think
could
you're
be
right, but
wrong on that.
I wouldn't quote me on that. I'm not too sure myself.
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure I watched that event. Then I was live in at MLG,
Yeah.
and then I kind of just went to Team Liquid, got involved with that community a little bit, started, just progressing through and learning more about StarCraft. Yeah.
So you start learning more about StarCraft. Do you start playing it, or are you more of a spectator, or do you remain more of a spectator?
Um, I was I was playing it. Not very good. I got to top gold for 1v1, and I don't know. There's just way too much stress involved. So I could, at some point, I just kind of lost a little bit of interest because there's more stress than just having fun,
Hmm.
which I'm sure is the same for a lot of people.
Yep. Yep. So so you get up to gold and you're following the pro scene and where does this idea to track player earnings, where does that come from?
Well, I've always been a big sports fan. I'm from Canada, so specifically NHL, and
Sure.
in that league there's a cap. So I've always been following certain players' salaries and how it fits into the cap and that sort of thing. Also, I'd always been involved with different teams, leagues, and I finally decided it was time to do something on my own, start my own project. So I started the website, and I just was playing around with different ideas in my head, maybe doing something with like fantasy leagues or something like that. And then I thought this would be really a straightforward, basic idea with information that people would be interested in. Um, and it was very basic and simple to calculate. So I don't know. I guess it was just a easygoing project I could start on my own. and I could manage on my own, and it wouldn't be really a huge undertaking.
Right. You say that. I got to ask you some questions about that. I mean, you look at the site, especially now, and there's just so much information. I really, I really want to know how you manage it all. But before I do that, I have to take a step back because I am terribly ignorant of hockey. What is a cap, and how does that relate to the earnings?
Well, it doesn't. Well, each team can have there's a cap, floor, and a ceiling. So
Okay.
each team needs to fit within those two numbers,
Okay.
and then the players' salaries. So here it's salaries, not earnings, which is a little bit different in real
Right.
sports. Um, so the teams have to meet the floor. They can't go over the ceiling, and the players' salaries have to be within that limit. So there's different websites like capgeek.com and stuff like that, where it lists all the data for NHL players and different teams.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Yeah, I sort of I had some ideas in my head, but I was not close. So I'm glad I asked you to explain that.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. So back to StarCraft, and you get this idea. It's an idea that is pretty straightforward in concept. Where are you pulling the information from? Is it just Wikipedia, or like where is all that data?
Yep. 90% of the time, I'd say I'm relying on the Wikipedia staff, who are amazing, to take that data and then throw it in our back end. I do that manually. There's no script or CMS or anything like that. So I do that manually and then just post the results.
Do you still do that? You do all of it manually?
Yep. It's all manual. It's kind of a pain for European events or British events or even Korean events if the conversion rates haven't already been calculated, because then I have to go manually for each different placing, calculate the conversion to US dollars, and then throw it in there.
Wow. I did, I was just looking at this and was convinced that you must have some script or a team behind you, because it just seems like there's so. I mean, it's not like the tournament is happening. A big tournament is happening every single day, but there are enough big tournaments. It just seems like you would. I mean, how much? I mean, just ask. How much time does it end up taking? When like a big tournament like an NLG happens.
Okay, so MLG just finished this weekend. To update it, I mean, it doesn't take that much time. I'd say to update one tournament with, what did MLG pay out, the top 8 or
I think it's top 8.
16?
It might
I
be
can't
top
even
16.
remember. That takes maybe 10 or 15 minutes.
Okay, that's really not as bad as I thought.
Yeah. Our CMS was coded fairly well, so you just type in, say you wanted to, Idra got first place, you just type ID, and then it auto searches, so his name will probably come up, so you're not typing or scrolling through a whole bunch of names. So it has like an auto search feature and stuff like that.
Gotcha. Well, so it sort of preempts my next question, which is it sounds like from idea from concept to physical site, it's pretty much as you expected. But was there anything in the and getting it started and the maintenance and upkeep and all that you weren't expecting to do, or wasn't expecting would be so easy or take so much time, or?
Well, the main problem is that I have no coding experience. So I don't know code. I don't know how to fix anything on the website. I don't know how to deal with any of that. And I'm also not a designer, so I didn't design it. I didn't do any of that work. So originally I hired 2 different people to set it all up for me. But that kind of comes back to bite me in the butt a few times if I want to update something, if I want to add a new feature. I don't know how to do that, and I don't constantly. This is just coming out of my own pocket. It's just my own little project, so I don't always want to hire a coder. So I've had a couple of people who have been able to help me out in that way, just volunteer and do some work. So I'd say that's probably like the one unexpected thing that's kind of hurt me, is that I'm not a coder.
Well, I'd also like to know, since you talked about your history of following the numbers in sports. I mean, you're the one who has put all the information in. Is there anyone that's really surprised you in any player that surprised you in the earnings? Any race? Any trends that you've seen that have you weren't expecting or you find interesting?
The one thing I'd say that I find interesting is that, and I'm sure a lot of people will agree with me, is that Fruit Dealer is still in the, or he just got top kicked out of the top 10
Yeah.
um, earnings, and it's all because of one tournament. That goes back to, I believe, the very first GSL season one, where he won, I believe, somewhere around $90,000 or $95,000.
Yes.
So, and also I'd say the discrepancy between the top 10 to maybe the mid 50s players. Top 10, you're looking at anywhere in six figures, 100, 200, 300,000. And then if you go to 50,000, you're looking at around 20 to maybe 30,000. So there's really a huge drop off, I'd say, after about the top 10, top 15 in earnings.
Hmm. Um, I guess I kind of want to know as well where you see this going. Is it just sort of a pet project that you're going to continue for now, or do you is there would you like to see some changes to the site, uh, that maybe haven't been implemented yet? Things you'd like to see happen?
In the future, I've thought about doing it for different games,
Hmm.
maybe League of Legends or Dota, something like that. The problem with that is going to be it's a 5v5 team-based game, and in those games, teams seem to constantly break up almost weekly.
Oh,
So
okay.
keeping track of each individual on a five-man team where they're constantly moving around seems a little daunting.
Right.
So I'm not sure if I'm going to go that route. Specifically towards StarCraft 2, uh, right now the site, I agree. I've heard people constantly tell me it's really basic. There should be more features, more updates, and that kind of thing. So I'd like to see things like right now you can only see a player page and a team page. On the player page, if you try to click on MLG Raleigh 2012, you can't click on it and see who got first, who got second, who got third. Something that like that would definitely be nice to have. Um, Another thing I'd like to probably see would be currency conversion built into the website. Um, so if somebody's in Europe and they want to see in euros how much money it is, they could do it that way. That would be a simple feature I think that a lot of people, since this is so global, could benefit from.
Yeah.
And then the last main thing would probably be team leagues. Right now, I can't calculate team-based events. So LGIM just won the IPL team league event. I I haven't added that into my website because I don't know exactly if they divided it by who played, how many games each of them played, if they divided it by all the players on the team. So I just leave those out. It would be nice if I could maybe add another section to the website that calculates team-based events.
So with all the features that you're talking about, would you be looking to add on more people, or this be something you would just sort of train yourself to be able to do these things eventually? What are your thoughts?
Um, I've had some people come up to me and say they'd be willing to help me add the events and do some volunteer work. For whatever reason, I've never accepted anybody. I've always just done it myself. I don't know if there's an exact reason for that. It's just my little project, I guess you could say. So I'm just a one-man team. Um, if I was looking for specific coding or graphics work or whatever to get these new features added in, I'd I'd definitely be open to it. Um, because, like I said, I wouldn't be able to do it on my own.
Well, so we've talked a little bit about how the site first came about and things you're thinking about changing with it. I guess I also kind of want to know just how do you feel about it? You started with this idea that this really simple idea, this straightforward idea that you thought you could do, and here it is, and people are using it, they're loving it, they want more from it.
Yeah, when I first started, I definitely never thought it would be as successful as it has become. Um, so yeah, I'm definitely grateful and excited that people are using it as much as they are. I have some of the stats like here in front of me. We launched in on June 1st in 2011, so a little over a year ago now. We've had almost 500,000 visitors, 275,000 unique visitors, and over 2 million page views. So when I first started out the project, I never thought it would be that successful, and it's definitely surprised me that people are as interested in it as I thought they might be.
Now, this might be a bit of a strange question, but I'm sort of curious. I mean, right now it's as you said, a pet project. Do you see anywhere? Do you have any desire to sort of make it something more robust, something in any way profitable for you, or would you prefer that it just stay as sort of a thing of enjoyment?
I've never thought about making a profit off of it. I just started it as a project, threw a bit of money at it. I just pay for the hosting. It's really not a big. It's not about making money. It's just about having creating a unique community tool that everybody can use and enjoy. And yeah, I'm not really in it for any kind of money.
Um, so I'm jumping around a little bit here, but could I ask also? You talked about Liquipedia sending stuff into the back end. Um, do you work with other well, groups, organizations like Liquipedia, in getting that information out there, or is this sort of it's a weird way for me to phrase it. I guess what I'm asking is, uh, do you work with any other organizations, or is it sort of you do your own thing, and anyone who wants to pull from the site can use it, and anyone who wants to contribute can offer their services to you?
Yeah, I haven't really made any type of partnerships or agreements with anybody. I know ESFI has done some articles using my statistics. I've had certain people contact me asking for Excel spreadsheets just so they can take a look at the data and see some things, I guess, use it for their own personal use. Uh, I've thought about contacting maybe different leagues and seeing if they were interested in using the data, whether that involved them putting it up on stream during downtime, just as like for their player profile pages on stream. Um, but besides that, yeah, that's pretty much it.
So, as way of maybe wrapping up the first half here, you've also talked about other games. You've talked about possibly. My whole mind is just jumbled with the different questions, so I've been jumping all over the place. I apologize, Justin.
Yeah, it's all good.
Um, we talked about this earlier, but we both have college starting tomorrow, and it's um, my whole mind's a mess. um, but one of the things I wanted to ask about was you're talking about some of these other games, for example, Dota, League of Legends, and you've also referenced games like Quake and Counter Strike. Do you still keep current with a bunch? Stay involved in a bunch of other scenes as well, or is it just StarCraft?
Well, it kind of breaks down into my, I guess, personal esports career, whatever you want to call it, that you said we were going to kind of talk about in the second half.
Yeah.
Right now, mainly I just watch StarCraft 2. I'm just involved in this scene, but from time to time I'll watch a different stream. I guess League of Legends, Dota 2 would be the two games, but I'd say I'm mainly focused on StarCraft 2 right now.
Well, I mean, I think I've asked the questions I wanted to about SC2 earnings. I really want to get into this an unexpectedly for me an unexpectedly rich um, esports, competitive gaming, whatever you want to call it, competitive gaming career and experience you have. So sort of take us back now, and let's focus in on you. Um, how'd you get started in gaming, and where did that competitive gaming first come in?
Um, well, I first got involved in gaming. I don't exactly remember at what age. My parents were somewhat strict, so I didn't really start playing games until I was probably in junior high, I want to say, when I got a PlayStation 2, I believe. So I got a PlayStation 2, started playing some console games. Then I got involved in PC gaming. Competitively, it really kicked off for me, and I want to say about 2005, 2006, when I was playing Counter Strike Source. So I had a team. I was playing in Cal. I was playing in CEVO with a friend from high school and just different teams we had.
Yeah.
And then that broke off into getting involved with a guy. His name is Derek. I don't exactly remember when this was, probably sometime in 2006 or 2007. And he owned a game server company,
Hmm.
and he decided that he was interested in starting a quote unquote, I guess you could say, professional video game team. I wouldn't necessarily label it as professional. So we started up the team, started up the website. I guess my title would have been maybe general manager, something like that. And so we picked up a Counter-Strike team, Call of Duty team, and yeah, we went with it in 2007.
Well, so I mean, tell me a little bit more about that. So I mean that because that's a pretty significant undertaking. I mean, did you just after you heard the pitch, you just decide it was worth a shot, or like what convinced you that to take something so time consuming and so financially risky?
Yeah, well, Derek was the one who's going to be paying for everything, and at the time in 2007, esports was nowhere near what it is now.
Sure.
So signing players and signing teams was more of just at that time for our level was more just a verbal agreement. There was no written contract or anything like that. So like I said, we weren't necessarily the quote unquote professional, or we weren't the evil geniuses or complexity at the time. Um, we just had a couple teams. We managed to send them out to a few smaller LAN events, and that was kind of the start in esports for me.
So did you get to know anyone on those teams well, or what was it like managing teams for the first time?
It was definitely interesting. I made a stronger connection, I'd say, with our Call of Duty team, which kind of led me into my next initiative in esports. So I had a good connection with those guys. Spent a lot of time interacting with them, helping them where I could, booking their flights when they had to go to their LAN event and that kind of thing.
So was there anything? So you step in this position of sort of general team manager or general manager of the teams, and was there anything that you were expecting? Were there any expectations about the associated that you had with the position that were either untrue or you didn't think of, things that sort of surprised you as you actually had to fill those shoes?
Um, I mean, it's been a while now, but I can't really say that anything really comes to mind that wasn't really expected or anything like that.
Well, so take us then from that initial signing as the general manager to your next endeavor, which you sort of hinted at came from one of the teams you were working with.
Yep. So after that, I got in contact with a couple of guys who were starting a website called Insider Esports, and that was in 2008. I'd say it was kind of like the ESFI world of its time, I guess you could say. We were just a smaller news website trying to create content for Call of Duty, Counter-Strike, Counter-Strike Source. So I was one of the Call of Duty editors, and I started creating articles and content. And yeah, that's the first time I started writing esports articles and getting involved in that side of things.
Huh, so you go from being a team manager to then being a news editor for Call of Duty. That's a pretty big jump.
Yeah, I guess like I said, I don't know if people are thinking maybe like general manager of the team is sort of like a high up position, and then going to editor is like something lower, like you'd probably consider now. Um, but at the time, I just saw this as a new opportunity, a new website that had potential, and it was something that just kept me within esports and kept me doing something.
Well, yeah, I didn't mean to imply sort of a hierarchy. I was just thinking more that the responsibilities and are so. I mean, one, you're managing a whole group of people and arranging flights and making sure that they've got spots at tournaments, and they're all hotels and all that. And then the other, well, now you're turning around and you're managing a bunch of writers and making sure that the content is out daily. Those are just such very different ends of the spectrum to me.
Yeah, it was definitely like a different jump. I had no previous experience with writing any type of articles. I'm not a journalist whatsoever. At the time, I was only maybe 16 or 17 years old, so I was just doing it as something fun to do and cover the game that I enjoyed at the time.
So why did you decide to be an editor as opposed to just one of the writers?
Um, I don't know if I really necessarily have an answer for that.
Sure.
Um, that's just
Just
how
what
it went.
happened? Yeah, fair
Yeah,
enough. That I mean that
yeah.
happens sometimes. It's just how it is. Well, do you have in creating all the content you did for Call of Duty? Is there a favorite article that you have?
Um, my favorite article probably wouldn't come from my insider esports time, but kind of later on within my esports career.
Okay. Well, maybe tell us what it is, and then connect the dots for us and bring us up to that point afterwards.
Yeah, sure. So after Insider Esports, I left the website and got in contact with Chris Lemley, who was the owner of Team Pandemic. They're no longer around, but they were, I'd say, top three, along with Evil Geniuses and Complexity within North America. They were quite a big team sponsored by Dell, Razer, and Playtronics. So I got involved with Chris Lumley. I created a great relationship with him. I still talk to him today, and he taught me quite a bit about esports. I guess you could say he was sort of my mentor. Um, when I was younger at the time, unfortunately, at the time when I was with Pandemic, they were sort of on the decline. It wasn't during their pinnacle, um, but I still learned a lot with Chris, and I really enjoyed my time working with him.
And so you, you were gonna mention your favorite article
Yeah.
for Penta.
So then after Team Pandemic, it closed its doors. So I was no longer working with Chris. He had to shut down the team. And excuse me. Then I went to SK Gaming again as a news writer. So my first piece within SK Gaming was Counter Strike Pro Mod review. For people who aren't really familiar with Counter Strike Pro Mod, it's modification using the Source engine um, that Alex Garfield, the owner of Team Evil Geniuses, was the head of this project and funding it, I believe. So Alex Garfield and his team were creating this mod to rejuvenate the Counter-Strike 1.6 scene, or Counter-Strike 1.6 scene, and new graphics and that sort of thing. Right. So it was my first article on skgaming.com to review the game. I had pre-access, try out the game, review it, and I believe within a week or so, the article had somewhere around 35 or 40,000 hits, and at the time, that was like a really big deal for me. That was a lot of views, and it was only my first piece on SK, and yeah, that was probably my most successful and the piece I'm most proud of that I've written.
So well, now I gotta know. At least give us a small hint of what the article, what was in the article. What was the review like? What'd you see? What'd you experience?
I really enjoyed the game. At the time, there were still some bugs. The character models weren't working like Counter-Strike 1.6. It still felt a little bit like Source, so I know a lot of the 1.6 community wasn't really happy with that. But considering this was sort of an independent project and they were really trying to push forward for esports and the Counter-Strike scene, I thought they did a really good job with the update that I was reviewing. And I mean, the only downside was that it was an independent project, so every update was rather slow, and it was just a small team working on it. So I think they did a really good job, and I'm a little bit surprised that it really hasn't taken off, or it hadn't. Now with Counter-Strike Global Offensive I guess that's kind of an obvious reason why nobody's really talking about it much anymore, though.
Right. Okay, so you're with SK Gaming now, and you're doing articles for them. Where do you go from there, and why do you go from there?
Um, I was only with SK Gaming for a short amount of time. Maybe I don't remember, but I'd guess maybe 5 or 6 months. Um, I don't know if I necessarily have a specific reason why.
Sure.
Um, but SK Gaming, it was a good team. Thorin was the editor-in-chief there. I believe he's now with Acer Esports. He's definitely one of the best writers and interviewers, I'd say, in the scene. So I respect him a lot. And I for whatever reason, I just didn't feel maybe necessarily a part of the team, or there wasn't really a good team atmosphere happening within the editors. Um, so I was talking with someone named Chris Tevingham, who at the time was one of the co-owners of Loaded, which I previously mentioned about going to MLG Raleigh with a Loaded World of Warcraft team at the start of this. So I joined up with Loaded in 2010, and I guess my position was, I guess you could say editor in chief. I don't know if I really had a formal position. I was kind of just like the content manager. I basically ran the website and handled all of the articles and aspects of the website.
Justin, can I stop you for a second and just ask you before we sort of bring ourselves back up to the present, because there's still a couple years in between. Um, why esports for so long? Like, what about esports just why was it the bug that bit you, do you think?
Um, people always ask others, I'd say like in interviews on YouTube, and why are you involved in esports? What drives you to be so involved in the scene? And people are always giving answers, always giving answers. And I've never been asked this question personally, but whenever I watch those interviews, I'm always like, what is my motive? Like, why am I involved in this scene? And I honestly can never peg it to one specific thing. Like, why am I involved here? Um, I guess it's really just comes down to that I've done it for so long. I really love the competition. I really love video games, and I really love the community aspect of it. A small niche community trying to build something and trying to create something.
Oh, this is gonna break form, but now I gotta ask. You're talking about that community aspect, that niche community trying to build something. Does the StarCraft community and its mission for esports, does that sort of is that problematic for you, or do you still see that as is trying to build something and still within the kind of community that you're looking for?
Uh, Sorry, like what exactly do you mean?
Sure. So you just mentioned one of the things that you really like about competitive gaming, about esports, is um, community. The idea of a niche group coming together to try and make something bigger than just a video game that people play. Creating, as you talk about, with all the writing you've done, creating all this content and driving forward this larger idea of competitive, taking um, enjoyment of a video game and making that into a tournaments and competition and professional players and teams and all that. I guess what I'm curious about is when you reference that niche community trying to build something up from the ground. StarCraft 2 is sort of the StarCraft 2 community has become, well, is obsessed with the idea of esports needs to become mainstream and everyone needs to, or that's the goal, is everyone sort of accepts professional gaming is a normal thing, is an appropriate profession, and I guess I'm sort of talking through my question. I guess what I'm trying to ask is, when you talk about a niche community and liking that niche community, does the idea of StarCraft 2 wanting to be mainstream and not niche anymore, does that go against the sort of community that you're going for, the sort of closed off and tight knit and all that?
In some ways, I'd say yes, and in some ways, I'd say no. I think the StarCraft community, in some ways, are too worried about becoming the biggest thing, like the biggest sport, being on TV, growing at huge rates that we couldn't even believe it's happening. Um, I think that trying to still have the community aspect as long as we can, where it's just a small group of people who are all interested in the same thing, are all here for the same reason, is more important than having hundreds of thousands of people tune in on TV who don't even know exactly what's happening and who aren't so passionate about it as maybe people who have followed it for a long time necessarily are, or know exactly what's going on.
Right. Okay. That it was a poorly worded question, but it was a very eloquent answer, so I appreciate that.
Okay.
I was had a bit of trouble trying to get at what I was going for, but to go back to where we're at, you're talking about Loaded in 2010 and going to MLG, and you're with Loaded. So from that point, and you're talking about being a content manager. Take us from that point forward again. So what happens to you, and what happens with your esports career?
Yeah, I definitely say Loaded is sort of where the boom came within my esports career. I was at first I was sent to Dallas to cover ESCA and Arblet event in Dallas. I was 18 at the time, so I'd say it was kind of like a big deal. People in my family were kind of surprised. I'm going on all expenses paid trip to Dallas to cover video games. Like people were kind of dumbfounded, like, oh, this is happening. Like I didn't know that happened. Like people are sending you there, really? So that was sort of a big deal for me, getting a trip to Dallas to my first live esports event. And then 2 months later, I went to MLG Raleigh, which was even a bigger event, and really kind of opened up my eyes to live esports events. And then, unfortunately, in September in 2010, Loaded shut down. We were quote unquote bought out by evil geniuses. They only retained two staff members. They retained one of our teams, the Heroes of the New Earth team, which they later dropped. So it was definitely kind of a killer. All of the management team at Loaded, besides one who went to Evil Geniuses, was, I guess you could say, bummed out. Quite a few of us haven't, or quite a few of them haven't really done anything in esports since that time. It's kind of really just a motivation killer for all of us.
Yeah.
So after Loaded closed down, I really didn't do anything in esports because I was kind of down about it, like how all of us could put so much effort and work into the team for it all to be just taken away by one individual. So I'd say for about 6 months, I kind of just followed esports for fun, and I didn't really associate myself with any teams or any leagues or companies or anything like that. And then in February in 2012, I was fortunate enough to get an offer to work for S2 Games, the company behind Heroes of New Earth, and become a part of their esports team.
Huh. All right. So tell me, what is that? What does that mean to be a part of the esports team? What are the responsibilities involved?
Well, I was brought on by a good friend of mine. His name's Sashi Singh, and he was the esports manager at S2 Games. I had previously worked with him at Loaded, so I had a good relationship with him for, I'd say, at least a couple of years at that time. So he brought me on to sort of be an assistant esports manager, and my main responsibilities were really just taking a monthly budget, putting it towards smaller to mid-sized events, small LAN events, and trying to grow the game as much as we could with, and specifically my job was for smaller and mid-sized tournaments, and then also promoting them through social media and trying to get people behind them.
As you said, that was in February of 2012?
Or February 2011.
Okay, so you're working on that, and how does that go?
I liked it a lot. It was the first time I really made any money from esports, from working. I guess you could say it was the first time I had a real esports job, not just sort of volunteer wishy-washy kind of titles and that kind of thing. Like it was a lot more serious deadlines. I had expectations to live up to.
When was that considered a full-time job or?
Well, I was working remotely from home.
Gotcha.
Michigan's are in their offices are in Michigan, and I live in Canada. So I was just working from home, and it was not a full-time job ever. No.
So you're working with Hear the North, trying to grow the scene, and you've had such a variety of positions. It's I had just to be honest, I had no idea that not only your history was so extensive with esports, but the amount of positions you've held in esports and the variety it's just astounding. But sorry, take us from here as a new. If you're working with them, and then why does that stop?
Um, well, I started in February of 2011. I had the opportunity to travel with the team, where I really met them for the first time at DreamHack Winter in Jönköping, Sweden. That was a great experience. I got to travel to Sweden and met the whole team there. And then I guess you could say business is business. And my boss, Sashi, was let go from his position. And then shortly after, I was also let go of my position. So I worked with S2 for about a year.
Okay, so we're what that ends us. We end up. Is there beginning of 2012?
Yeah, I guess around February 2012 was my final month with them.
And from there, or do
And
you? I mean, do you get involved in another organization? Are you sort of freelancing right now, or?
no, after that, I haven't done anything with any esports team or league or anything. I've just been focusing kind of on SC2 earnings and just rolling with that, enjoying esports. And if there's a project out there I want to join, I might do it. There are a few things I'm kind of doing on the side with a few friends, creating some interesting websites and that kind of thing, which are hopefully going to be released soon. So there will be a few projects in the future.
So do you see yourself? So if you found an organization, I don't know, ESFI for example, that you got interested in working with them, you could see yourself going back to becoming a news editor again, or content manager or something like that. That is a possibility for you in the future.
Um, I'll be 100% honest here. I don't know, this might sound kind of self-centered. It might not. But after my time at S2 and earning a monthly paycheck every month, and I'd say quite a substantial amount
Yeah.
for the amount of work and time I was putting in, to go then and just volunteer and as like a basic entry level position, it just doesn't interest me anymore. I put in like I guess you could say like 3 4 years of volunteer work, um, and I had fun with it. I really enjoyed what I did. I don't regret doing it. But where I'm at right now, I just can't see myself going and doing that again.
So you would, if I'm understanding correctly, you would really, for you to take up an opportunity like that, it would almost certainly need to be paid and paid decently for the work that you'd be putting in.
Um, I don't know if I necessarily have to be paid. Um, if there's maybe some type of travel incentive to go to events and cover them, I'd probably look at something like that.
Okay.
Um, I guess my main thing would be I don't want to go back to being just the little volunteer peon who's at the bottom of the chain who gets told what to do kind of a thing. Like I feel like I've built my own portfolio. I have a lot of experience, so I feel like I'd be a greater asset um, to maybe like a management team or helping run the website, that kind of thing.
I gotcha. So you've put in the time and the work and the effort. You're not interested in repeating again because you've gotten that experience and you know how to do all those things and you've proven that you can do all
Yeah,
those
I mean
things.
that's how I feel. I don't know
Yeah.
if others would feel like from who are the CEOs of some organization would feel the same way, but if that's how I feel. So, yeah.
No, I mean that seems perfectly justified. Um, well, we've got. I'm checking the clock. We got about 15, 20 minutes left, somewhere in there. Um, I want to ask you what we was usually more traditionally our quote unquote second half, which is um, more about outside of esports, just who you are and what you do. So, I mean, well, you are a student. So, what are you studying at college?
Yeah. I go to a college here in Manitoba. I'm a business student, so I'm taking business administration, and I'm heading into my final year.
Nice.
So it's a 2-year program, so I could continue on to university and finish my Bachelor of Commerce. I'm not too sure if I'm going to do that at this time. We'll see what happens.
Sure. Well, is there a particular motivation, for going into business, or why? Another way to ask is why business?
Um, well, I went to the University of Manitoba for 2 years. I really had no idea what I wanted to do. I was kind of going in blind.
Sure.
It was a good learning experience for me. Um, I- some people might view it as kind of like wasted time, like you just spent 2 years there doing nothing. But um, I'd say any education is never wasted. I had some good classes and that kind of thing. But after my second year, I was just in the arts, and I didn't want to continue on with that. So I just decided to take the year off. I decided I was going to work, figure out kind of what I wanted to do, and then I just decided on business administration. And I had my sister's friends were taking the program. They really recommended it. Um, in Canada, college and university are kind of two separate things.
Hmm. Okay.
University here is much like college in the States, and then college here, I guess you could say, is more like community or technical college in the States.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, so it was recommended to me, and yeah, I really enjoyed my first year, and I'm starting tomorrow and really looking forward to my second year.
Do you have? I mean, you talked about you're not sure whether you go on to university. Maybe this is a silly question to ask, but looking even farther ahead, do you have a particular company you'd like to join, or do you have a particular business you'd like to start up or get involved with, or do you see it? I guess someone asks, do you have a particular vision for where you'd like to see yourself going afterwards?
Um, Ideally,
Sure.
although this will probably never happen, but I should never say never. I could see myself working for Twitch TV
Hmm.
in some kind of maybe marketing role there. I
Yeah.
think they have like a really great team. I know a couple of people that work there, and I think that would be something that is a sustainable career or job that is also somewhat involved within esports, and I could kind of tie the two together.
Right. That's very cool. Yeah. Well, I my knowledge of sort of the requirements for you being involved with Twitch marketing are, well, zero. Do you, for that sort of position, do you think you would need to go into university or go on to university and get that bachelor's of commerce?
To be honest, I'm really not too sure
Okay.
what
No.
they would expect.
Sure.
Um, yeah, I'm not sure.
Perfectly. I'm not sure either, so perfectly fine. I was just sort of curious because you mentioned is a possibility, but not a certainty yet. Um,
Yeah, I mean, and one of the more reasons why I'd say that is like I'm from Canada, so I'm gonna need some type of visa or work visa to actually work in San Francisco, which is just another thing to add on top of that. So,
Fair.
like I said, it was kind of like a dream world kind of job.
Nothing wrong with dreaming big, and I mean, well, besides never say never, there's no reason to think it couldn't happen, or there isn't possibilities for an expansion to Canada, and you could find a way to work at a Canadian office. I don't know.
Yeah, definitely.
If we're thinking big,
Yep.
if we're dreaming, make it happen. Be the first. Um, well, tell us a little bit about when you find free time, when you're not studying or working on SC2 earnings. What is it that you like to do in downtime?
Um, I enjoy sports. Um, I enjoy bike riding. I go on really long bike rides throughout the summer. Unfortunately, that's not possible during the winter. um, I somewhat try to get involved within photography, um, and and just taking interesting shots and HDR and that kind of thing. Um, for whatever reason, that never really clicked with me. I don't know if it's just because I don't have the time, but it's like I found it definitely kind of difficult to learn and also very expensive.
Were you self-taught or were you taking classes? Or
Yeah, just self-taught. Yeah.
you take a series of photos and you self-critique yourself and then try and improve upon it.
Yeah, sort of. It was really just for fun, just something to do, try a
Yeah.
new hobby.
Well, speaking of that, is there a hobby you haven't had a chance to try yet that you sort of like to give a go?
Um, I don't know. No, there's nothing that I can really think of.
Fair enough. But
Unfortunately, at this time,
yeah,
school, work, and esports take up a lot of my time.
fair enough.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you did talk about being very outdoorsy. So and well, implying that you're outdoorsy and loving sports. What do you do, well, besides studying during the winter when everything gets cold?
During the winter, I'd say I'm stuck indoors quite a bit. Winnipeg is where I'm from is one of the coldest parts in Canada.
Uh,
Um, you're probably not familiar where with it is. It's about 8 hours straight north of Minneapolis, so
okay.
we're just above North Dakota.
Yeah.
During the winter, I mean, the coldest temperature we'll get will be like maybe minus 40 degrees Celsius, and at those cold temperatures, it's basically the same in Fahrenheit. So it's around like minus 45 Fahrenheit, I think, something ridiculous like that. So I spend a lot of time indoors, and
Fair enough. Yeah.
I don't enjoy the cold that much. But I'm also into skating and playing hockey just for fun.
So you do still find your sports outlet during the winter.
Yeah, occasionally. No, I wouldn't say that often.
Okay. Fair enough. Well, we have our final four, which is favorite or recent that you found good: music, movies, books, and food. So maybe starting with music, is there anything you're listening to recently or that you really enjoy that you'd recommend to everybody?
Um, I'm gonna be honest. I'm probably the absolute worst person to ask these four questions to, because for whatever reason, I'm I listen to music, but I'm
Yeah.
not like a music buff whatsoever. I hardly ever read books. Movies are not really my thing, I'd say.
Fair
And
enough.
then I forgot what the fourth question was.
Food.
Food.
Food?
Um, what's the most interesting food that I've had recently, or?
Or like a really good dish, a really good, favorite dish, or a favorite. I want to say genre of food, but that doesn't work. A favorite um, type of cuisine.
Um, I'd guess I'd go with kind of like Asian, like Korean barbecue, something like that maybe. I kind of like trying different types of food.
What's the strangest food you've ever eaten that you remember?
Um, the strangest thing I've ever had was frog's legs, maybe.
Really?
Yeah.
How are they prepared?
Um, I was younger when this happened, but I'm pretty sure they're just grilled. I don't know exactly what else they add with them. I
Huh.
mean, to be honest, it just tastes like everybody says this with kind of like unique foods, but it tastes just like chicken. It's so cliche to say, but from my memory, I'll stand with that statement.
All right. Frog legs taste like chicken. Grilled frog legs taste like chicken.
Yeah.
Huh. It doesn't make them sound more appetizing, but it gives me a reference point at least. Um, okay. So food. You said Korean barbecue, but you like to try new things.
hmm
Um, I'm still gonna try and get at least music out of you. Is there anything like a band? Does any band come to mind that you like, or a song, or a genre?
Uh,
Maybe
I don't
not,
know.
maybe not all time favorite, but just something that you heard and sounds good. Anything
I
come to
guess
mind?
recently I've been
Yeah.
listening to like a lot of Avicii, I guess you could say. So I'm kind of like into the house trance kind of music.
All right. Give it to him one more time.
Avicii.
Okay. I'm not, but I'm going to give it a shot. So I want to make sure I heard it correctly. Okay.
Okay.
Ichi. Any any song in particular you recommend if I'm just gonna go give them a look, or should I just
Um,
whatever? It's all good.
I don't know. I'd say anything's good to go.
Okay. All right. I'll give it a shot, and it'll be new for me, but I'm down with that. I'm your food is like my music. I'm willing to try whatever and see what happens. So I
All right.
appreciate the reference, and we'll see how it goes. Um, sort of in closing here, is there anything that we've talked about this hour, whether it's SC2 earnings, whether it's about your incredibly long and productive esports career up to this point, or just about yourself that we haven't touched on, or maybe you haven't talked about the way you wanted to, and you'd like to throw something in now?
Um, no, I'd say it's been pretty detailed. This is definitely like the first time I've done a podcast or talked about the website, talked about myself within esports. I've always been on kind of like the interviewer and never being the interviewee. So I think we covered everything pretty good. And it's been a pleasure.
It has indeed. I mean, I didn't quite know what to expect going in. Again, we've talked about the site now, and the site seems pretty straightforward. And but we I just started asking about the site, and suddenly there's you start hinting at uh, this great experience behind it, and it's just been the past hour has been really cool to sort of dig into that and see everything you've done that I had no idea. It isn't broadcast to someone like me and who really only knows the SC2 community. All the stuff you've done, all the work you've put into esports over years and years. It's really cool to be quite honest.
Yeah.
So I'm really really grateful that I could learn that and that you could share it with us. Um, but in way of wrapping, shout outs. Are there any shout outs you'd like to do as well as people who want to keep up with you? How can they do that?
I don't really have any specific shout outs.
Okay.
Don't have any sponsors or anything like that.
Right, right.
But if you want to check out the website, it's www.sc2earnings.com. Our Twitter is @sc2earnings, and our Facebook page is facebook.com/sc2earnings. So you can check out all those things. I try to be as fairly prudent with the social media as I can without completely bombarding people.
Sure. Well, do you have a personal Twitter that like if people want to keep up to date with what's going on with you, they can do so?
I have a personal Twitter, but I have it
Fair.
on lock.
Yeah.
But if people want to give me a follow, it's twitter.com/primetime So primetime with a Y at the end.
Just thinking for those of us like myself now who want to know as soon as you go into, as soon as you join with a new esports organization or start your own or these new sites come out that we can sort of keep up to date with what's going on now that we know that you have this incredible background. I really want to know what's next when it happens.
Yep. Those projects I was kind of hinting at during the interview, like I said, you can probably expect to see those, I'd say, in 2 to 4 weeks. So if you're following me on Twitter, you'll definitely find out about it that way. Or I'm hoping it'll be somewhat big news on Reddit, Team Liquid, and sites like that.
Perfect. Well, we will keep our eye out, and then maybe once everything is been launched and things are underway, we might even be able to snag you and your friends back to talk about it officially, possibly.
Yeah, I'd definitely be open to that. I've kind of just been, I guess you could say, consulting the project. I haven't necessarily made most of the decisions, but I'm sure my friends on the project would definitely be interested in coming on.
Wonderful. Well, we will definitely follow up once the news goes live because I don't even know about it yet. But now you've given an announcement of an announcement, and
Yeah,
now I have to follow
typical.
through. True. It's how you prove you're part of the StarCraft community.
Exactly.
Well, thank you, Justin, so much for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been awesome.
Guys, for everyone who's watching this now, trying to think, we're planning, so we're more or less planning to stick with the SC2 community for a couple more weeks, and then hopefully, if we can, we'd love to branch out into to be quite honest, the Pokemon community. We're also going to branch out into the fighting community and MOBA if we can, get a couple people. But as usual, we'll let you know on Twitter and on Facebook when those interviews are set in stone. And if you want to keep up to date with that, it's all on the page. So to everyone who's watching, thank you so much. Have a great evening.